Yes, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you are. Thank you for joining us. We are here in this fantastic panel of absolute experts in their fields, where we're going to try to explain how it is possible that less is more, and how minimalism can be the key to achieve the 2030 SDG goals. We're going to start by a small, like a very short run of introductions, and then we can kickstart the discussion. So, Tatiana, let me start with you. You are the director of energy of the Energy Center at the Moscow School of Management, and you're also one non-executive director of Novatech, and you have more than 20 years of experience in the analysis of the global and the Russian energy markets. Can you just tell us a little bit about what is it that you really do in your daily job?
Well, thank you, David, for the introduction, and hello, everybody. I have quite an interesting history of my career. I've started as a purely oil and gas person, so, you know, nasty fossil fuel researcher and analyst. I've spent 20 years with academia, and then I've started to realize that actually it doesn't work. So the deeper I was going in the oil and gas, the more obvious it was that it is non-sustainable. So I've started to look at the green energy, at renewables, at hydrogen, and at all the methods to decarbonize oil and gas, which turned out to be extremely interesting. It's my new passion. Now I'm spending most of my time focusing on sustainability and decarbonization, trying to promote it in Russia in particular, and globally as well. I'm also working in the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, and it's my major focus there, decarbonization of oil and gas. And actually, I would say, you know, this transition, this personal transition, for me, it was quite an important experience to see that really people can change their mindset when they have a good argumentation, when they are really diving into the figures, when they are looking at the scientific basis. It's impossible to refuse that there is climate change. It's impossible to actually close your eyes and ignore what is happening with the energy markets. And right now, energy transition, decarbonization, recycling, reuse, it is really becoming more economically attractive and more sustainable business model. And that's why, as non-executive director at Novatech, but also at the global oil service company Schlumberger, I'm really focusing on the business side, exactly on this sustainability agenda, because it's the only thing that actually makes the business competitive nowadays.
That's great. I can think of a few people that would disagree with you, but I personally couldn't agree more with what you just said. So, GHASSAN, Abi, FADEL, you are the co-founder and managing partner at ModFit. Can you tell us a little bit briefly what is ModFit?
Hello, David. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. So we co-founded ModFit in 2016. The idea started. It's an online home design and furnishing solution. So we had people furnish and decorate with a professional interior designer, and all the experience happens online. And then the clients, based on their budget, they will get a list of furniture and decoration that exactly fits their style and their design. And they can buy everything through us, and we make sure to deliver and install the design that they had on the platform. So
fantastic.
If you look at what we're doing from the sustainability perspective, we have different axes where we have worked, and we see the potential. Actually, myself, I have a background in operations and logistics and supply chain. I worked 10 years in this field. And then I moved to interior design and the design industry with a operations and supply chain optimization lens. So if we look at our service, we have different aspects where we were able, even in an industry like design, to improve the sustainability and the sustainability of the industry. And there are different aspects that I would like to talk about. So the first aspect is bringing the technology. Then you have the other aspect, the optimization and logistics, and then moving forward, a lot of areas of improvement in that field.
That's great, and I'm sure we can go more in depth into it. Let's continue with a round of introductions. We have Monem Bellelahom, and he is the group CEO and founding partner of Sustainable Square. Can you tell us more about your company and what you do?
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. My name is Monem Bellelahom. I'm a group CEO of Sustainable Square, 15 years experience in the field of social impact and sustainability. We are a Dubai-based, homegrown advisory firm in the field of CSR and sustainability and social impact, now getting into impact investing as well. With 5 global offices, one in Dubai, headquartered, one in India, Kenya, Ghana, and then we are getting into Central East Asia with an office in Bangkok. I've spent the last 15 years working with the private sector, government, and social enterprises on integrating sustainability and integrating social impact practices. Now we work more with the financial providers and asset management companies on mobilizing schemes towards financing the sustainable development goals and impact investing.
Great, thanks for that. Jason Grant, the founder at the Automated Method. Tell us a bit more about you.
Yeah, Jason Grant. Thanks, David. Probably easiest, how did I get to the Automated Method? That's probably where I can start here. I started with an IT company, and then I started consulting for making business decisions with the owners that wasn't technology based. It was operations based. And then when I realized from that, I could actually start another business inside that business, helping minimization be profitable. And I'm going to use constantly in this conversation, I'm always going to refer to small business. I mean, it applies to everybody, but small business is easy because there's so many of them, right? And so there's so many variables, there's so many things that can be fixed, and the less is more. It's just amazing how, and Tatiana said this perfectly, your mindset, right? When you said you can see the change in their mind when they see something they didn't see before, right? It's the same for me when which I'm going to talk about later on, but business intelligence. So if you were to imagine that my business is a small business modernization company that focuses on business intelligence, and the first time a small business owner has ever seen that, like a dashboard, would be because I showed it to them. And then the potential for figuring out profit sectors or minimization can make, revenue change is all right in front of them, but they've never seen it. So that's what makes me passionate, is business intelligence.
Sounds very interesting. Mm-hmm. So, Tatiana, let me bring you back to the discussion. You probably are the one in the panel with the most academic background. What changes have you seen, or what can you tell us about the trends that you see in overall consumerism and in particular in the energy sector?
Well, great question. If you look at the whole history of economics as a science, you can see that the main criteria of optimization during the last couple of centuries, it was to maximize profit. That's the core part of capitalism as we know it. But actually right now we came to the conclusion, as civilization, it became absolutely obvious that it doesn't work actually. And that if we want to survive again as civilization, we have to look at different criteria. And that's how the very idea of sustainability came up. It happened just 30, 40 years ago. So it's quite recent for the humankind. But the more we go into it, the more it's becoming visible that actually it was deep in our mindset for centuries. We simply didn't name it this way. But actually trying to find this balance between economics, environment, and social issues. It was the main target of any society, any civilization. So I think in this respect, we are not actually creating something completely new. We are just going to the basics of the normal life. It is not easy because for the corporations, for the business, for many governments, it's quite challenging to change their decision-making criteria, to look at the natural capital, to look at all the SDGs. It's really making any decision much more complex than it used to be when you just look at IRR and that's it. But this more sustainable approach, it actually creates also a lot of new benefits, which we didn't know in a classical business environment. And so, indeed, it is one track, so changing mindset, changing approach, changing criterions for decision makers, but at the same time, it is also supported by an incredible technological progress. So you've mentioned already, GHASSAN, that technologies are really providing absolutely new opportunities for us. And you've mentioned, David, that energy sector, it is so much dependent on, so our society is so much dependent on growing energy consumption. Actually, no longer. And that's the biggest change, because with the new technologies on energy efficiency, on energy transformation and consumption, we can see already several economies like UK, Germany, Japan, so mature economies, rich economies, to be frank. Not everybody so far can afford it, but the richest economies, OECD countries, they've actually seen already decoupling of their GDP growth and their energy demand. So you do not need to consume more energy in order to produce more GDP and in order to increase the level of your life. And that's the biggest game changer, because all the historical outlooks that were produced like a decade or two ago, they were thinking about incredible energy demand growth, first of all from the non-OECD Asia, China, India, and that was looking like the more oil, gas and coal we can produce, the better, because otherwise we will not survive. Right now, it's not true. Even China is already approaching this peak energy demand. It is visible. We don't know whether it will be 2030, 2035 or 2040, but it is close already. All the demand curves, they are going to plateau. It has happened already with the majority of the OECD economies. So now the question is how to transfer these technologies to the developing countries so that they can also change the way they consume energy. But it's much more the question of transfer and penetration of the new technologies, international regulation, international trade, rather than mission impossible. Now it's possible.
Okay, that's very interesting. Because actually, one of the exercises we did recently in my job is the climate interactive model. That is an MIT model or simulation of climate change, and actually the calculations that they do in there is that the energy demand is going to continue growing at the global scale. Of course, there are certain countries that are already decoupling, as you said, but you touched on the economics and the business case of this. And I want to bring here Monem to talk a little bit about this, because in my opinion, there are certain SDGs that they do have a clear business case, and all of them related to energy, for instance, and anything related to reducing and optimizing processes, of course, is very easy to justify from an economic point of view. But there are other SDGs that maybe that economic benefit is not that direct. What do you think of this, and how we can actually support those SDGs as well, Monem?
Well, it's a good question. Which exactly SDGs do you mean? I mean, any of them. Take gender balance, my favorite topic. Yeah, it looks like not directly related to the economics, but then if you go deeper, if you look at the recent IMF reports and other studies which were made by many consultants, you can see that the biggest share of women you have engaged in the business activities, the more opportunities they have to really improve their careers, the better there is the economic result. Similarly with poverty, it's not just solving a problem, it's also creating a huge opportunity. Clean water. Yeah, you are not just avoiding problems, but you are also creating many other new business ideas, new opportunities, new points of growth, which you were not even thinking before that. So I think it's much more the matter of our creativity, what to do with these SDGs and how to try to monetize these opportunities that they are providing. Of course, some things they will require massive investments, but even with my favorite energy, if we were talking a decade ago, I would say, climate friendly energy globally, theoretically it's possible, but very expensive. We cannot afford it. These technologies are too complicated. No longer. Again, we had just recently a very interesting conversation with the International Energy Agency, and they've shown their models, which actually the latest runs they had already in 2020 illustrate with the technological level that we have today. So with the existing technologies, not something under development, but those technologies that are already operational, we can achieve their sustainability scenario, which is in line with the Paris Agreement goals, and 1.5 degrees by 2040, 2050 at the same cost as sustaining the more dirty fossil fuel-based energy sector. Because fossil fuels, they are becoming more expensive. As they are depleting, you have to go to more difficult, deep fields. It costs more to produce and to process them. You have to reinvest a lot of money just to sustain production on the brown fields, which are also depleting. So all in all, right now, we came to this point when actually we can choose spending nearly the same amount of money, either for nature-friendly solutions or for something else. So it's becoming a political choice.
No, thank you. It's very good. Monem, do you want to add something? Tatiana stole a little bit your question, but do you want to add something to that? That's fine. No worries.
Yeah, I would just, to not be redundant, I would just, build on whatever Tatiana has mentioned brilliantly. Definitely the business case for a few SDGs is clear out there. So the financial bottom line, the financial return in specific SDGs is outlined there with a lot of researchers and scientific researchers out there. But there are a couple of SDGs that the private sector is still demanding whether there is a clear business case here or no. Like, for example, good health and well-being, or gender equality, or reduced inequality, or climate actions. People are still debating it. I would take the issue from a different perspective here. So there is no call for the private sector to adopt all the SDGs. We are not here to adopt the 17 SDGs, and not the 17 SDGs apply to each business sector. There is something that the private sector are getting into, which is materiality, conducting materiality on the SDGs. What is material from these 17 SDGs? What is material to my business? What is concerning my business? What impacts my business from all these 17 SDGs? Then I have to focus on. For example, Tatiana has brought the topic of gender equality. Of course, there are so many studies and scientific researches that have shown that when we ensure that there is a fair gender parity, gender equality in the workplace, then we have a much more productive workforce, which means eventually much like a better profitability and then much more sustainable environment. For example, when we apply climate change and carbon reductions in the workplace, then we have a much more efficient operation, which means reduced costs, which mean eventually more profit and much more sustainable environment. So these SDGs are really not showing a direct correlations with the profitability, but then with the direct data that is being generated. The more we advance studies and scientific researches and apply data to this, we can see much more correlation with the profit. And there is something else that I would just mention quickly, which is the more we see ESG ratings of companies today. So the investors are saying if a company is making money, it doesn't mean the company is healthy. So we need to look at the financial performance of organizations and operations. And the non-financial performance of organizations is related to environmental, social, and governance, or ESG factors, right? So if a company is not really tackling one of the non-financial risks, they will be rated, negatively, or like a low rate, which means they're kind of going blind towards one of the most important keys to their business. which is they're not benefiting from an opportunity. So missing an opportunity to grow and to sustain their business in the future. So all the SDGs, as long as they're material, they're bringing added value and they're touching the P&L and they have a return on investment.
Couldn't agree more. And let's hear from GHASSAN. I'm going to bring you in actually because you are actually manufacturing something. So I want to hear your opinion on how you integrate SDGs and sustainability in your business.
Yeah, so Tatiana mentioned a point that is really applicable in our case, how industries can use very mature technologies. You don't need to invent new technologies to be able to attain a certain level of sustainability in your operation.
Most of it's already there. Right.
Yeah, like in the interior design business, it has been untouched by technology for a long time. But in our case, we brought the whole experience of home design and furnishing online by relying on very mature technologies that would be video cam, chatting, and even augmented reality has reached a certain level of maturity that can be easily integrated in these businesses. So in our case, we were able to democratize kind of the home designing experience, and that would impact directly promotes the well-being of people and would give this access to a wider segment. So we relied on very simple technologies, and we were able to, and it didn't go against, like another point that is very important that Tatiana mentioned, that sustainability can go hand in hand with GDP growth. So in our case, when we integrated technology and we looked at this sustainable approach in designing by reducing the commuting between interior designer and their client and by reducing the cost of designing itself, okay, we were able to improve the impact of this industry and the reach of this industry. That goes directly with what Tatiana was saying regarding GDP growth and sustainable approach.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. I have a question for you, Jason. One of the things that I read when I was researching a little bit is that your company designs and builds businesses that require the absolute least number of humans involved.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was quite a bold.
Double-edged sword. It's a double-edged
being all
sword.
humans and actually all needing a job. It's quite a bold statement. So how do you link that to sustainability? How companies that have less people working for them are more sustainable?
Okay, so say for example, take Toronto. There's a lot of small businesses that do not have a competitive advantage because they can't economically survive, right? Especially in this pandemic, it's a perfect example. And so if you can minimize the amount of people that are actually salarized inside that organization, they have a better chance of either marketing themselves or designing better product or service or whatever you want. Their economy shifts a little bit internally, especially in a small business, right? So I know what that means to some, because that's like, how do I have 10 employees and now I have 5. But at the same time, when you maximize all these processes so that everything talks properly and everything is as efficient as possible and all the right apps are being used and everybody knows what they're doing, then like there's a different economy inside that business, right? And that's like what I feel like is a competitive advantage for a small business, because like I said, there's a lot of things that should survive that maybe even have sustainability built into them, but they're nowhere near the monopolies that control the market. So if you can give them an upper hand or some sort of, weaponize them a little bit, then they stand a chance. And that's what I notice a lot of business owners are doing now. If they think that they believe in what they're doing, then they find a way to minimize their operations. And usually that's by redesigning the inside of their business.
Okay.
With more software, right? That's all it is. It's more software.
And actually, that's one question that I had for Tatiana. We are seeing, apart from the global increase in population, and I know we touched on the decoupling of energy and growth and all of that, I totally agree. But there is certainly a global increase in digitalization that requires more servers, that requires more networks, more agile, that require more energy as well. So even with that trend, how can the energy sector can cope with that increase in demand from that specific sector that is going to grow exponentially? No, for Tatiana, sorry.
Okay.
Well, that is true. So data center are really becoming one of the biggest electricity consumers for cooling. Yeah. But at the same time, all this digitalization, it has a double effect. On one hand, growing electricity demand. On the other hand, actually all these digital technologies, they allow to dramatically reduce energy consumption and especially losses. So with the demand response, when the consumers are actually switching off or reducing their consumption depending on the tariff and on their real need to have this equipment in standby regime, demand could go down by 20-25%. Demand for electricity. That's a lot. That's really a very significant saving. With all the digital technologies and predictive maintenance and big data analytics, actually, you can prevent lots of repair, lots of situations when the equipment is not utilized due to some breakup or whatever. So actually, these more flexible, more agile electricity, in particular electricity system, which is from the very beginning designed in a much more efficient way, because with the digital twins, you can actually build even, nuclear power plant or gas field or petrochemical plant and refinery. You can build them in a much more efficient way. You can monitor any leakages, any problems, you can prevent them from happening, which makes the whole system significantly more efficient. So I would say my impression is I don't know any studies which would compare these two effects from digitalization on the energy sector. But my impression is looking at the figures on saving that digitalization allows along the whole energy supply chain, that the effect will be definitely in favor of digitalization.
Can I say the hashtag remote work? Because it's on everybody's brain all the time, but that's one of the things that I think is a huge savings across the board for everything, like fuel, travel, time, and then also real estate, anything connected to larger, smaller, it's amazing, right? And it's all because it's digital. So I think if you were to have, more servers and more virtualization, I don't think that even comes close to how many people are driving to work, Or say, for example, one of the things that I noticed with remote work also, it's the behavior of the people change too, right? So say outcomes, not hours, which is something that's not really known to a lot of older style business owners. But say now, that means that they don't have to work the same way for the same amount of money that they did before. Like a salary can be broken up into outcomes. So say, for example, if you're doing that, then you're not spending as much time doing something with technology, right? Which is also a huge savings.
Yeah, totally true. GHASSAN, I wanna bring you in again. More from the perspective of a small owner company, and we discussed before the panel that some of the things you do is just repurposing furniture, existing things that they have, and that of course is very aligned to sustainability. But I wanted just to check with you, why are you doing that? Is because you think your company should have a role in educating consumers? And a second part of the question is, at the end, as any business model, you need to sell your services and products to grow. So if you actually are too good in convincing your clients that they don't need to buy new furniture, maybe how do you see the long term of sustainability of your business, the economic sustainability?
Yeah. So talking about sustainability without taking into consideration the style of the client or the needs of the client is actually not a sustainable business model itself. You need to know that your clients are satisfied and are getting better and better products or services. So in our case, there's a new trend in the industry, and this is something that we've realized hands-on in the market. The durability of old furniture. So there's a trend of repurposing and refurbishing of furniture. And the main reason is the durability of old furniture, like 10, 20 years old furniture, is proving to be much better than the very recently produced furniture. So the clients, on one hand, are able to get a furniture at a very affordable price, their same furniture, which has a better quality, and at the same time, it's repurposed to look nice and to be to have a certain design that is contemporary or that goes with the taste of the clients. In this case, we were able to reduce consumption while at the same time maintaining a very high satisfaction, or even improving the satisfaction of the users or the consumers.
Okay, and the second part of the question, if you are too good at that and they stop buying from you because they don't think, how are you going to cope with that?
So the good thing is in interior design industry itself, it's continuously changing. In any design industry, you always have new trends and new styles that change from a year to the other, especially now. So what we are looking into, and we think this is the future of the industry, is to offer furnishing and decoration as a service rather than a product that you own. So this it's the subscription model, which is something that has been quite mature in many industries, and we think it's time to bring this subscription model to the furnishing and decoration industry. So on one hand, you are able to, the client subscribes to this service, and he has a place that is continuously changing with their style, with their mood fit. That's the mood fitting. That's the mood fitting approach. So they want to continuously change and update their furniture and update their style. And they just subscribe to this model. And furnishing companies would simply keep rotating this furniture and keep refurbishing the furniture that is already in the market. So the clients are able to get a style that is always updated, while at the same time, the business model of the furnishing and decoration industry is still very profitable, and at the same time, it's achieving sustainability by reducing consumption and, of course, reducing furniture waste.
I've been trying to find a coffee table for my living room for the last year and a half. I haven't found anything that I like, so let's talk coffee on the call.
Moodfit.com, easy.
Perfect. Monem, let me again talk about money. I work for a bank, so probably this is a topic that is close to my heart. I was reading that we need between $3 and $4.5 trillion per year to be mobilized if we hope to achieve the 2030 SDG goals. Where do you think that money needs to come from?
It has to come from people like you.
I don't have that much.
Well, actually, it was estimated that in the developing world, we need between $2.5 trillion to $3.5 trillion, to be achieved in the developing world, right? From now until 2030. Last year, I was like, okay, how much do we have money right now mobilized towards the SDGs, right? So we can achieve that target, by 2030. And I was like, do we have a reference globally on how much companies are investing in the SDGs? So I was like, the only reference that we have globally is the 2% net profit law that is existing in India. So that's the only thing mandated towards the social impact or sustainability, or community. That's the only reference. So I was like, okay, if all the top great companies around the world, they will invest 2% of their net profit towards the SDGs or the community, how much are we accumulating in terms of sum of money yearly? Guess how much? $50 billion, where we need $2.5 trillion minimum in yearly base to achieve the SDGs. So we are not even touching like the 1%, 2% of the financing needed to approach the needed amount of money to be achieved, by the SDGs. The only way we can achieve the SDGs is to shift from that classic charitable philanthropy CSR approach toward much more investment. We have, as human being, we have failed miserably to achieve the MDGs. And that's because we have taken the MDGs, the Millennium Goals, we have taken them from a CSR perspective. Let's support the MDGs. Now the call, don't support the SDGs. We want you to invest in the SDGs because there are $12 trillion of business opportunities where you invest in the SDGs. So there is a slice, there is a pie out there. Go and take your slice. Invest in the SDGs. Don't support it. Don't put it as cubes in your office that are colorful. They're beautiful, by the way. The designer who designed the SDGs is genius. It made all the people, design their offices with the SDGs, but we don't want you to support the SDGs. We want you to invest in the SDGs by mobilizing finances through bankers like yourself, financial institutions, portfolio managers, directing all these funds or financials towards the SDGs. And we have seen a lot of great initiatives around the world. Talking about bonds, for example, Mexico was one of the first countries in the world that has issued an SDG-related bond. It wasn't much, it was around $890 million. Then came the World Bank that has issued an SDG bond. It was $1.5 billion. It was oversubscribed. So investors, they really rushed to put their financing there because they really believe that there is a return on investment in the SDGs. Then came HSBC, and you're one of the employees of HSBC. So HSBC issued an SDG bond. Then HSBC Malaysia issued a Sukuk, right? And you know about this. So by pushing the investors and pushing the financial institutions to develop impact-based loans or impact-based products, financial products, we can accelerate the uptake of the financing towards the SDGs, and that's the only way we can achieve it.
Yeah, I agree, totally agree. And I do see, I shouldn't talk much because I'm the moderator, but I do see an increasing trend in sustainable finance in the market. All the financial institutions, since I joined HSBC 5 years ago, I have seen before and after over the last 2-3 years in that. So I certainly, I'm sure we are going in the right direction. We need to find out if it is fast enough. Jason, I'm going back to you because I got trapped in the concept of having less people. So that's fine. We reduce the number of humans that are required in those organizations, but
I already know where you're going to go.
What happens with that people? And there is one topic of conversation that is coming up more and more is the just transition. Okay, we all need to transition to a more sustainable way, to a more efficient way of doing it and more digital. But what happened with that people that they don't have the capacity to adapt quickly? How do you see this?
Okay, it's obviously an unanswered question right now, but I'm going to say anybody that knows anything about how software works or how API works or how processes inside cloud to cloud stuff works, administration is getting squished to zero, right? And so a lot of institutions have tried to do re-education, retraining, or offering some opportunities for people, repurposing their roles, retitling, that kind of stuff. That would be what I would say would be the now solution. But I think it's a temporary solution because I think that the asymptote of how fast people are going to be deleted is actually it's going to come ramping through society, and we're not adapting to it right now. We're kind of just waiting to see what happens. So to answer that question, I don't really know the answer. I just know what people are trying to do right now, and one of the things I can say, so if you want me to go a little forward here, is when the business is like an organism, right? And so I feel like some of these really forward-thinking visionary business owners, what they're doing is they're running cognitive and behavioral tests on their current team. And what they're doing is they're finding out where they're strongest and where they're weak, and they're repositioning these people and retitling them to make the organization better. And so they don't have to remove the staff person. What they're doing is they're using that staff person's actual merits to increase the value of the company. Or, instead of just minimizing the staff, you can repurpose by figuring out where they're stronger. And that's a really forward concept, but there's not many people that are doing it, but the businesses that are succeeding where they want to, It's you got the people already. It's hard to find good people, but how do you make someone who's say their value is over here not as valuable as something over here because you don't know but now you know how they think, so you've moved them.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic answer. Tatiana, would you have an opinion on this? What is happening on the energy sector and the people that need to be repurposed?
It's amazing. Actually, we've had a fantastic experiment during the last 6 months with the COVID, because most of the employees, they had to work remotely. And despite all the expectations, nothing bad has happened. The world didn't collapse and energy systems, they didn't stop working. So for many companies, it was actually a very important lesson. And I know that many of them are now, they've decided not to bring all people back to the office. So remote work is really becoming a new normal, even for such critical infrastructure as energy. And moreover, all the companies, due to the economic crisis and the need to cut expenditures, they went for the optimization of their personnel. So it's indeed it's a normal reaction of the business, and they found out that many things they could be really replaced by algorithms. So you do not need to have workers checking stupid tables and doing other mechanical work, which is really, I mean, when you are doing it yourself, you feel how discouraging and boring this stuff is. So it's not inspiring work at all. But at the same time, they are now forming new metrics teams that start to develop new businesses, that start looking for the new opportunities, developing scenarios, and so on. Many people, they actually already say right now that probably after this experience of working at home, we wouldn't like to get back, and probably we wouldn't like to work like 8, 9, 10 hours per day. Probably half a day would be better for me, for my family, to have time with the kids. So this change in the mindset and in the preferences, maybe we do not need to earn so much money. Maybe we do not need to really work that hard as we were thinking just 5 years ago. So changing lifestyle. And if you look at this Z generation, actually, they are much more focused on the impressions, on their inner balance. So it's not about making career and $1 million salary. The preferences are changing. And I think it's a normal process, because this consumerism, which was dominating our reality like a decade ago, it was something outrageous, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. No. Very interesting. GHASSAN, your company is already based on the concept of not having to be in an office. So I guess this is something like, I guess you were not affected that much for COVID and not being able to see your clients, because you already have the business model in building there. Have you seen the growth of your company over these months, or because people are at home and they have more time to think about these things, or how do you see the future coming?
The future is at home. That's what we figured out during COVID, because at some point, people changed their priorities and stopped spending. So in March we had a very big drop because of the start of the lockdown and the pandemic becoming really serious. So at that point we saw a very reduced revenue in this month, and then it started picking up again. And the main reason behind it is that people started spending more time at home. First, they started understanding how they would like their home to feel like, and making it more practical, and at the same time somewhere that they can really enjoy their time, rest, work. So there was a lot of requests for work desk or workspace or home offices, and also a lot of requests for outdoor spaces, because now people are looking at their home in a different perspective, especially that they are spending much more time at home. So they would like to have a nice corner outside. They would like to have a desk where they can focus and work at home. So yeah, we see the trend becoming the norm, and especially after most of the company were back to work normally, we can see a lot of employees that used our service are still working at home and did not move to the office again.
Yeah, that's great. If you have a nice place to stay at home, why
Why
the
not?
hassle of commuting? Exactly. And depending on the city, of course, you are. Like, for instance, for me, commuting is quite easy. I'm more traditional in that, I have to say. I like to work from the office. We have a beautiful building here in Dubai, and I like to go there. But I do see the point in London. Some of my colleagues, they take 1.5 hours to commute to work every day. So it's 3 hours.
There'll be hubs. Right? There'll be hubs.
Yeah,
There'll be
exactly.
Like after COVID-19, there'll be more. The popularity of shared workspaces is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to go. That's going to be the new thing. Hubs, though, like GPS coordinated hubs based on your team's location and the calendar. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's the future. One of the things.
I also think that it's very relative to the personality and the type of the job. So I think we should always give the option of either working from home or working at the office. And it really depends on the lifestyle of the person, the character of the person, if they can focus at home, if they prefer to change space to be able to work. So now we really understand, even at our company, we've given the flexibility for every employee. If they want to work at home, they can work at home, and they have the office open, they can come and work at the office whenever they want.
GHASSAN wants to design both offices and homes. That's why he wants everybody to have the space ready. Jason, there's a question for you in the chat. Let me read it aloud. Do you see the same values around sustainability that are evangelized on global level, reflected on some of your clients or leaders you work with?
Well, the thing is, though, the answer is yes, but yes and no. Okay, because like usually it's because they don't. It's the value proposition, right? Like this is the thing, investing in company culture, if they don't see an ROI, it's difficult for them to spend the money when they don't have it, right? So one of the things that I really like about, and I'll say this, business intelligence is it finds money, right? So business intelligence is super important because I call it the unmonitored, right? Say for example, a small business doesn't know that it can spend money that will help the business become healthy, help the employees think in a healthier way, and that's what Manem said, right? It's what you said. You were talking about money doesn't actually mean it's a healthy business, correct? I believe you said that. Yeah, so that's like what I would like to see, of course, is like, because I know company culture makes people feel better, and then their business, like the business gains, but it's not as much as you would hope, right? I think it's just because they're bleeding too much in areas they don't know how to stop the leaks. So then they just focus on the actual service or product. They don't think of company culture at all, right? And so it's a 50-50. I hope more. I know that it keeps people around, right? People don't want to stay at a company they don't believe in anymore. They just go, like they ghost, you know. That's true with remote work too, right? Considering that you can jump from one job to another remotely. Why would you stay with one where you don't agree with the culture?
No, totally true. Yeah, that's true. Manem, I want to bring back the conversation to the sustainability, to the pure sustainability, and how you see sustainability, at least based on your experience in your company. Do you see? I'm just thinking. Usually, when there are economic crisis like the one we are entering, or we are in the middle, I'm not sure, or we are exiting, hopefully. So sustainability a lot of times loses, or companies lose interest in sustainability. There's still a lot of companies that they see it as a nice to have, but not that clear business case that we were talking about. How do you see it from your perspective and your client base and your conversations?
Very interesting question, David. I think the way I see it, let me say, since June, talk to my clients and then corporate sector in the market, every single day. Three main topics have been at the focus for the private sector. The first topic: how can we become more greener? The second: how can we become more resilient? And the third: how can we conduct an inclusive recovery? And I'll start with inclusive recovery. What does it mean, inclusive recovery? We want to recover, but without disregarding the right of other stakeholders that impact our business, because we can only make it if we grow in an inclusive manner. That's the only way forward. Business cannot function independently from the community and independently from the other stakeholders. That's the first number one equation that the business has to answer in order to thrive and continue building. The second thing: how can we become much more resilient?
And resilience, we've all discovered it as a human being. If we're not resilient, we would have died during the pandemic and during the lockdown. So the private sector is not different from the human being. We needed future practices that can help build much more resilience in the business from a health perspective, from education awareness perspective, and from operation perspective, and from the remote work perspective. All these practices that can help us to become much more resilient when we're going to face, pandemics or going to face crises in the future. And how can we become much more greener? Because we have clearly seen that when we were locked down inside the houses, the air was fresher. The fish were swimming peacefully around the lakes and around the shores, and I live in Marina here, which was highly polluted by the boats, and the yachts, and then I could walk around Marina and see beautiful fish, swimming every single day there with no disruption. So we did understand that the planet needed certain break. And then we have to continue giving the planet that break so we can thrive as a human being and then ensure a good, sustainable future for ourselves. So how can we become much more greener? How can we become much more resilient? And how can we ensure an inclusive recovery that can sustain the business in the future? These were the main 3 topics discussed during my last meetings and every single day with the private sector.
That's great. I hope really companies, they continue doing. And they come to HSBC when they need financing. That's good. We have around 10 minutes. Do you guys have any question for each other that you want to post? Any topic that you want somebody to expand on, or we go for a final round of remarks? No questions? Okay. So let's go. Let's go around for just some final comments. We lost Monem, but hopefully he will be back. Tatiana, any final comments on how do you see the future of minimalism and achieving the SDGs? Yes or no? Are we going to get there?
Yeah, I'm sure we are. Again, we do not have any other choice. And I'm sure that today we have all the preconditions for that. We have the technologies, and I would say the ecosystems which have evolved during the last decade on the new technologies for the energy sector, both for the energy production but also for the energy consumption. They are so dynamic. There is such an enormous progress in R&D and in the new materials, in absolutely new approaches to the electricity storage, to the use of hydrogen. I mean, many fantastic things are happening. So these R&D efforts, they will definitely deliver results in the next, 3-5 years. We will see, I believe, quite a considerable breakthrough in the new energy technologies, similar to what we have experienced during the last decade with the solar and wind, which have reduced their costs like tenfold. Yeah, and made them really competitive with the fossil fuels. But then it is also the change of the consumer behavior, this change of our mindset we were talking about, less commuting, working from home, less consumerism. Just a more responsible behavior with any goods that we consume. And this will help on the demand side. Plus, this digitalization that we've mentioned and a new management of the energy systems and energy markets, which will also allow to optimize in this transmission between production and consumption. It will also help. So all in all, I believe that specific energy consumption per capita it will actually it will peak and start to decrease. It will happen with a different speed in different geographies, obviously, but I think this trend is already becoming visible, and that gives us a lot of hope, because indeed it is the energy sector which is responsible for the significant part of greenhouse gas emissions. But I'm quite optimistic we can do that if we will not spoil it somehow, but we have all the instruments to achieve these goals.
Absolutely, and I was just thinking on the drop on energy demand that the COVID situation brought globally, and that of course led to a decrease in carbon emissions globally. But probably that's not enough. We need to do much more.
It's definitely not enough.
Yeah. So that decoupling of the growth, is really the key, in my opinion. GHASSAN, any final remarks? How do you see this coming up?
Yeah, I think that we have now a lot of technologies that have matured a lot. And looking at our industry, we can see how we were able to use these mature technologies not to only attain sustainability, but at the same time to have a competitive advantage from a business sense. So we just need to be innovative in understanding or looking at the available technologies and seeing how we can couple these technologies with any industry, just like in the interior design industry, to achieve sustainability and business growth or GDP growth.
Okay, good. Manen, what do you think?
My last comment, I think the biggest joke of the lockdown, I think we've all felt that when we started consuming less, we freaked out the hell of the private sector and the capitalism world, right? We have noticed that with the minimal resources we can live, in the fact that we are all survivors right now, and then we consumed less, way less during the lockdown. So I think it's a big sign, for the capitalist world to understand that this human being or the human being can live with minimal resources and can survive to ensure a great planet and a great future for our kids in the future. So we are in an edge right now to change the paradigm, to change the way we are looking at consumption, to change the way how we are looking at consuming resources from our planet in order to ensure an inclusive, greener, sustainable world for our future. And the private sector can only adapt. They have no choice. They can only comply or be left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
Very true.
Jason, what do you think with less people working?
Well, it's not just that. How about this? If you can collect data, do it, right? Like, don't let any data out of your sight, right? Because I feel like that's what I noticed the most. I noticed that they're not, like, anybody isn't really paying attention to something that they should be. And then years go by and I'm looking at it as that's a resource. Data is your resource. Data can help you profit. Data can help you minimize, but they just don't know. Like, usually it's because they're not educated to understand how, like, some sort of algorithmic function in an app is there to help you try to figure out how to use ROI, KPI, whatever it is, all of that stuff. It's missing data. That's what it is. So I always tell people, I'm like, if you think you're not collecting it all, you probably aren't. So find a way to collect it all, because it's going to be good for you. It's very, very useful, right? That's business intelligence. But I mean, you say business intelligence to some people and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, okay, well, let's just focus on data. Information. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You cannot improve what you cannot measure, right? So
exactly. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Quote of the day.
Well, not mine, probably. I heard this. But yeah, it's totally true. I'm obsessed with data. The only time that I miss meetings is when I open my spreadsheet and I start looking at numbers and analyzing. I'm really bad in numbers, but analyzing trends from things that are happening, it is absolutely fascinating. And yeah, so I think we are 2 minutes short. There are no more questions in the chat. So I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I am aware of that because I wanted to put the focus on the panel. But my name is David Ramos, and I'm a senior manager in the sustainability team in HSBC in Dubai. And it's been a real pleasure to have you all in this panel. I think it was a very interesting conversation from very different topics, just from the pure energy demand, which is something that of course, there is a very clear impact on it, on climate change from the energy sector, as Tatiana was saying, to GHASSAN, that with his company is trying to change how things are done in an industry that probably has been very traditional until now. And of course, Monet, from a sustainability point of view, I mean, we are peers. Have been working in sustainability a lot of years as well. So I do kind of echo a lot of the things you've said. So it's absolutely very, very interesting. And Jason, I have to admit that I did know less about business intelligence, but now that you've managed to explain it in a very, very easy to understand way, I totally buy it. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, as well as whoever is listening anywhere in the world. And I hope you enjoyed the panel as much as I did moderating it.
Yeah, I had a great.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Day, everybody.